Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Shahien, and I'm the Executive Director of 50 Forward. For the past 7 years, I've been at the forefront of talent retention efforts in New Orleans. 50 Forward's mission is to retain the influx of young talent following Hurricane Katrina. Focused on both natives and newcomers, 50 Forward targets 23 to 35-year-olds and helps them build roots and relationships to stay here. In a nutshell, our goal is to help make New Orleans stickier. And no, I'm not talking about humidity. As a New Orleans native growing up here, I just assumed I'd never be here as an adult. It was almost this unspoken rule that I was going to leave home, and I was never going to come back, off to bigger and better places. And that's what my family wished for me. While as a student at the University of Virginia, Katrina hit and transformed my entire relationship with my hometown. Previously, I'd been the first to criticize New Orleans for all of its faults. But then, after the storm, I found myself as the first to defend her honor. In my last year at school, I faced a tough decision. Was I going to head off to DC with all my classmates, pursue an opportunity at a consulting firm or a national foundation, or was I going to come home? I was called home, and thankfully, I wasn't alone. The influx of young talent following Hurricane Katrina was tremendous. Recent college grads flocked to the city, all wanting to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And while the city was so appreciative of each and every volunteer, they were also pretty skeptical if any of this talent was actually going to stay here. You have to understand, for the leadership of New Orleans at the time, they were all baby boomers, and for their entire lifetime, New Orleans had been in a state of decline. Since the 1960s, New Orleans had experienced population loss each and every decade. Known for terrible public schools, rampant crime, and political corruption, some could have argued that New Orleans' best days were behind it. This was most apparent to me when parents would say that they didn't want their own children to come back once they finished school. Could you imagine being a parent and being home, loving your child so much, but knowing what was best for them was to not be with you, to not be home? So it's understandable why the city was hesitant to believe that any of this talent would stay. After all, their own children wouldn't. The main reason why this was the case was because of these insular networks, and 50 Forward set out to transform this mindset. We believe that if we could retain a critical mass of young talent, it would transform the city. Because no matter what the issues were that faced New Orleans, the biggest barrier to change were these insular networks. It was those networks that valued who you know more than what you know. It was those networks that made individuals who had lived here for 30+ years feel like they were never from New Orleans, all because when they were asked the inevitable question, "Where'd you go to school?" they couldn't answer with a local high school. So if a grown adult who'd spent their whole life in New Orleans didn't feel welcomed, didn't feel a part of the community, what were the chances that these newcomers would feel any differently? 50 Forward set out to change that mindset. We knew that was a critical element to ensure this talent stayed. First thing we did was we gathered all the people who were touching these newcomers. There was a plethora of grassroots organizations that popped up following Katrina, each interacting with newcomers. But they operated in silos, and they tended to not know about the other groups doing similar work. What they lacked was an organizer and a voice. 50 Forward pulled them all together and invited the business community to the table. Together, we had a unified front focused on retaining talent here in New Orleans. We pulled the local resources and became a one-stop shop for anyone looking for young talent and for answering any questions young professionals had. We became that go-to place. The second thing we did was we created a voice and communication strategy that resonated with our members. Timed with the rise of social media, we developed a way to talk with our now 12,000 young professionals in a way that resonated with them. 12,000 young professionals. 1 out of every 4 college-educated 23 to 35-year-old in New Orleans is a member of 50 Forward. Attracted to our witty tone, our no ads, no agenda policy, and our unapologetic pro-New Orleans conversation topics, people connected with what we were saying. They were hungry for information about this city. Lastly, we worked to create cross-generational connections. Those same skeptics, the business and civic leaders, were recruited by us to be connectors. As connectors, they met with individual 50 Forward members. They attended networking events across town, and they literally opened up their homes for young professionals for dinner with our annual dine-around. Peaking with 500 young professionals at 50 different community leaders' homes, all at dinner on the same evening, the 50 Forward Dine-Around broke down the old-school barriers that had plagued New Orleans and gave access to this next generation of talent. It was in those intimate settings, sitting across the table in someone's home, where the 50 Forward members had the opportunity to learn the inner workings of New Orleans. Many of them started relationships that led to job opportunities or the chance to join a board at a local nonprofit. More importantly, though, they got to sit back and imagine themselves in 20, 30, or 40 years with a successful career and a happy family here in New Orleans. Our connectors tell me that they got way more out of these dinners than even our members did. They walked away with hope and energy and the sincere belief that we were going to be okay. It was sitting at those tables, looking across at this new young professional in front of them, that they saw their own children. And they knew that if their child was to come back, he or she would be okay. And more than okay, he or she could also thrive like their new friend they had just gotten to know. It was those connectors who then began to open up the networks, advocating for these young professionals who they hadn't known their whole life. They were going to bat for people, pushing their friends and their colleagues to open up opportunities, bringing it to all of the young talent that was here. Because they knew for the first time there was talent in the city that, shockingly, they didn't know already. This was transformational. And that led to them believing in what was to come and thinking, you know what, it would even be okay if my own kids came back home. I believe that it was this reshuffling of networks that was truly transformational. When we started 50 Forward, it was set not to be an organization, but a movement. We were a part of that steering, and the momentum has been building. And I can tell you, it isn't going anywhere. Given my work, I like to think it's because of the specific individuals that I helped retain that have made New Orleans the city it is today. But the truth is, the impact of 50 Forward is so much more than any individuals. People come and go. Talent retention is not about never leaving. It's about making sure the place is ready when the talent arrives. New Orleans is now ready. I know this most clearly because my family and I are about to leave New Orleans for my husband's medical residency. Although we're moving to Boston, I know we're going to come back. And we are so excited about the New Orleans that awaits us when we return. A New Orleans that's open, that's welcoming, and has talent of all ages integrated throughout every facet of the city. I know that this momentum is going to continue because the talent that I meet with today have a different calling than the talent from before. Katrina is not a part of their lexicon. What motivated me in '08 is not the motivations of people coming today. They're not trying to save a great American city. They're trying to take advantage of the opportunities that already exist in a great American city. And that is what has led us to amazing acclaims, such as the #1 brain magnet in the United States, the #6 best city for young entrepreneurs, a top 5 city increasing shares of millennial jobs, and the #1 brain power city in America. In closing, if New Orleans, a city with its fair share of problems, can become a welcoming place for all young talent, any place can. The magic of 5 Forward is not New Orleans specific. It's simply the magic of getting together a diverse group of people and allowing them to learn from one another. It was by literally opening up our homes and welcoming the new that New Orleans had the opportunity to not just think of itself as it always had been, but to envision itself as the place it wanted to be. A place full of energy, full of hope, and full of opportunity. It is this change of mindset that is truly transformational, and I am forever grateful to have had the opportunity to play a small role in that transformation. Thank you.